Francisco Pancho Villa, born Jose Doroteo Arango Arambula, which I promise I am trying to pronounce faithfully, was an exemplary and heroic Mexican revolutionary general, rising so far as to become a preeminent figure in all of the Mexican Revolution, gathering mythos and becoming a Robin Hood type figure in Mexican history. Along the way, he also happened to become a fairly successful Hollywood star. This is for the future of us all, lost to history. How a heroic Mexican revolutionary found success in Hollywood.
We choose to go to the moon. We choose to go to the moon. We choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other thing. Not because they are easy, but because they are hard. Because that challenge is hard and we're willing to.
Before we get into the video, it'd be a huge help if you would leave a like and subscribe. Not only does it help us understand what kind of content you're looking for, it also helps with the YouTube algorithm. Thanks. The Mexican Revolution was one of the first so-called media wars, meaning it was a conflict where the hearts and souls of the citizenship could be swayed daily, not only at the printing press, but also in newfangled, quote, cinema situations, where fake heroics would be shown as one form of state propaganda. One such citizenship being swayed by the wartime propaganda was that of the United States. Leaning on a pre-baked racism towards the Mexican people possessed by Americans, media and television quickly made revolutionaries out to be violent. On top of the structural racism, America's media had one further ulterior motive. Many, and I mean many, of these media companies had direct conflicts of interest with Mexico at the time. For example, William Randolph Hearst. Weirdly enough, the same Hearst who built a 90,000 square foot castle smack dab in the middle of California, not relevant, just interesting, this same man owned nearly 60,000 cattle in Mexico. And when revolutionaries seized his unoccupied land in 1908, his paper, the San Francisco Examiner, suddenly took an extremely anti-revolutionary spin. Okay, so remember Pancho Villa? He's relevant to this all. This media coverage, whether good or bad, began making Villa a nearly mythological figure in America. Again, partially due to the new forms of media, televisions and radios, but honestly, mostly to do with racism. It was incredibly easy to stir up fear and just racist imagery in the American Southwest at the time. But knowing this, who really was General Villa? What was he like as both a revolutionary general and a movie star? In November of 1910, the Mexican Revolution was sparked in the state of Chihuahua. The poor peasants who took up most of the population were upset at the high food cost and structural mistreatment by wealthy landowners. Quickly needing military structure, the revolutionaries swiftly formed into a relative military command, where Pancho Villa was voted to lead a force of 28 men as a revolutionary first commander on his first post. And at 32 years of age, Villa was already widely regarded as one of the best shots in Mexico, and was prepared fully to lead men into battle with conviction. And after becoming the first revolutionary leader to defeat a state army in battle, all the way developing cavalry tactics of swift movements at the dead of night, Villa was awarded command of the División del Norte in 1913. A force of nearly 3,000 strong, Villa's unit was as effective as they were ruthless. And he was beginning to be successful in shaping his image as a brilliant leader and tactician. Later, in September of the same year, Villa was a battle away from finally becoming the nationally known hero he had valiantly been fighting to be. On the 29th of September, that battle, the Battle of Torreon, broke out. Villa was given his largest command yet, roughly 16,000 strong. And through 3 days and nights of fighting, the revolutionaries and Villa in command had an apparent victory found. However, their elation was short-lived. as shortly after violence sparked once more in the Battle of Zacatecas. It would come to be regarded as the most violent and bloody of all the war, the Mexican Revolution's Gettysburg. Fighting through beautiful hills and charming streets, the Battle of Zacatecas was said to have had, quote, 20,000 rifles showering the town at the same time. And it wasn't until the ammunition had dried up and the smoke had cleared that the horror became obvious to Villa and his men. Reports of piles of dead bodies and horses were common. Of all 6,000 federal troops, 1,000 revolutionaries, and perhaps an equal amount of citizens perished in the carnage. Yet still through this all, Villa was still technically winning both as a leader and as a general, leading men time after time to victory for the Revolutionary Army. But in April of 1915, after years of successful campaigns, humility was beginning to escape the general. When he had his cavalry, roughly 6,000 strong, prepare to go on the attack in Celaya despite not having proper ammunition or reinforcements. Through both poor scouting from Villa and possible financial aid to the Mexican federal troops led by General Obregón from the United States and then President Woodrow Wilson, the defeat was truly devastating. 3,000 revolutionary soldiers perished, and Villa had lost another 6,000 to capture by the enemy, alongside 32 cannon and over 1,000 horses. Yet, before this defeat at Celaya in 1915, that saw General Villa lose much of his power and influence in Mexico, he had a strange second career in attempts to garner aid for his movement, when he sold the rights for himself and his company to become a Hollywood act. On January 7th, 1914, the New York Times posted this, claiming that Pancho Villa would, quote, carry out his warfare against President Huerta as a full partner in moving pictures venture with Harry E. Aikman and Mutual Films. And shortly after this agreement is where the story gets convoluted, let's say. Immediately with their first reporting, General Villa's victory at the Battle of Ojinaga, by the way, a cunning defeat of nearly 5,000 federales or federal troops, immediately some noticed strange reporting alongside. Claims that the general has postponed his attack a few hours in order for cameramen to position themselves correctly. This, of course, would not be crazy if everyone's main objective there was making a movie, but it wasn't. They were there to commence in a battle. And there was more. The studio had General Villa wear a custom general's uniform, seen here instead of his revolutionary garb to stand out. And after the battle, there is evidence as well that General Villa began to reshoot scenes that were missed for heroic effect. And reports of Villa's commitment to getting the right shot were nearly as widespread as those of his heroics in America. Further, there was even some reports that members of the División del Norte were pressed into acting in reenactments. Despite all of this, according to biographer of General Villa, Frederick Katz, all of the more outlandish claims of the film are nothing more than myth. This according to the last surviving copy, unearthed in Mexico City, apparently lacking the reported reenactments and delay to aid the cameramen. Okay, so admittedly, even I was slightly disappointed to hear that most of the mythology around General Villa as a Hollywood actor has been overblown. Now, that being said, the mythology of him as a Mexican general, I would say has been underblown. This man was an exceptional tactician. But I digress because I assume that most history is just kinda sorta maybe just a tiny bit little like propaganda. Yet, according to Katz, there is some hope after all. He explained, quote, what the contract did specify was that the Mutual Film Company was granted exclusive rights to film Villa's troops in battle, and that Villa would receive 20% of all the revenues that the film produced. The reshoots in Hollywood and dramatics proved to not be pointing towards a documentary war film as previously promised, but rather a fictionalized drama of Villa's life. Called, unexpectedly, quote, The Life of General Villa, it saw the revolutionary's life be shown through rose-colored racist lenses. Instead of sharecroppers, Villa's family came from an approachable mid-class farming background. Relatable still to much of America, this, as well as having the story be anchored around the abuse of Villa's sister, a crime that fit and admittedly still maybe fits many Americans' racially charged stereotypes of Mexicans. God, I don't know. I hate ending this here because General Villa had quite a revolutionary career fighting for his people in all that seems to be curtailed with a story of white oppression. But it happened, so yeah. But what do you think? Did you know about Pancho Villa? Also, I'll include more references to the Mexican Revolution because I'm not nearly perfect and there's a lot more information to be learned. I'll include some great videos and other resources to look to learn more about it. And for the future of us all, we better get educated and find solutions.